I don't want old conservative voters to have a nice time. I want them to be miserable.
Yeah.
So I never want to get
So in a way, you achieved that.
Yeah. So actually, I was doing everything I set out to do in these.
Hello, my name is Caroline Clifford and you are listening to Needs Work number 2. This is the audio version of my Substack called The Authentic Comedian. I basically ask comedians to be on this show. They send me a bit of theirs that is not working as well as they hoped. And we just go through it. We discuss how to make it better, how I think it could be improved and made funnier. I did have a little bit of a technical problem that I didn't realize till the editing stage. So you'll notice a kind of difference in the sound texture at some point. I hope it doesn't diminish your experience. In fact, I hope it increases your experience to hear all the wonderful street sounds of Neukölln. Enjoy this show. Thank you. I am here with Kate Cheka, who is a fantastic stand-up comedian who used to be a regular on the Berlin circuit until you moved to London to find fame and fortune, to seek hope in the new world.
To seek hope in the oldest of the world.
Yeah, the oldest world.
Hi.
Yes, you're very welcome. And yes, you won the Funny Women competition, which is a nationally recognized competition. That's really huge, especially as I didn't get to the finals of that when I.
But you were in it.
I was in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I have kind of a funny story. I'm going to make it immediately about me.
Yeah, do it.
So at the time, they had the cosmetic brand Benefit.
Yeah.
Sponsoring it, which of course is I'm very familiar with these. Not at all. That's irony, because I don't wear makeup. And so they had, for some reason, they had all of these cosmetic girls there, and they don't know anything about comedy at all. And I had a really good set in the first round. Yeah. And they were like, "Oh, good set." And then I just bombed.
Yeah.
I bombed in the semi-finals, I guess. And the woman from Benefit came up to me and said, "Why didn't you do what you did in the first round?"
Oh.
It's like, this must be your first introduction to bombing.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
really.
It's a
I
concept.
didn't. Yeah. I thought it was quite sweet in a way.
The same Benefit girl was there. Why were they there for all the rounds? Is my question.
I don't know. I guess they just wanted to, or they were supposed to be. I didn't really. I don't ask.
You all feel beautiful afterwards.
Yeah, I don't really ask people questions about themselves. So I didn't get to the bottom of that.
There. Yeah. Do you know who won it the year it was you?
Oh, I wish I could remember.
Okay. Not that I want to age you or anything. But.
No, it was like 2006 or something. So you won the Funny Women.
I won, yeah.
That was amazing. So
thanks.
Yeah, great, congratulations. Yeah. And how's it been going for you in London? And tell me a little bit about transitioning from a smaller comedy scene, Berlin, to a larger comedy scene like London.
It was very complicated. I have a lot of very complicated feelings about the UK comedy industry that I probably shouldn't keep telling them because they don't like me that much as it is. But yeah, I don't know. I think also I'm nostalgic about Berlin. I have the classic thing of Berlin was an amazing dream world. And everyone's like, no, you can remember that there was also complications. Comedy's full of ego regardless.
I mean, there was a reason you left.
Wait, I didn't, but that's nothing to do with comedy. That was just the pandemic happened. I left Berlin and then I sort of missed my residency and so I just moved to London instead.
Oh.
It wasn't an effort I had no intention of ever living in the UK again. I just ended up back in London because Berlin didn't open up for ages and then I'd started comedy there and I got an agent very quickly, 3 months of being in London, suddenly I had an agent. And so I was like, oh, okay, I have to stay here for my career. But I had no intention of...
Right. It's funny how you just make your own story where I was like, okay, she's done everything that she could do here and just was ambitious and no. And then next thing, of course, we're all following your career as we do with the people that leave. But it's just then you're with the Comedy Store and all these amazing things.
Yeah. I mean, not anymore. I left them a year ago. But I didn't actually have any intention of leaving. I was done with Berlin, but I wasn't intending to go back to the UK at all. I didn't know where I was going to go. And then it just happened. And then comedy sort of turned into this thing where I was like, oh, maybe this could be my career. This could be my thing. And yeah, I go back and forth because I struggle with the UK industry. It's incredibly competitive. There's a lot more gatekeeping. This is someone's put it really well, which is the Berlin scene is it's growing. So every moment, everyone at the end of the day just wants to make really, really good shows. Mm. And the UK scene is just so much more older and it's so competitive and it's so saturated that you have a pick of so many people that you can just pick the people you like. You can gatekeep very well. It's not,
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so as I remember in London, you have all these, the good shows are ones that have been running for a million years.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you just have to wait ages to get onto them. And all the newer shows generally have no one at them, and they're at horrible places like Italian restaurants or something.
Yeah, they can be in really weird venues.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, there's people doing like obviously like innovative stuff, but I wouldn't say like the UK is the most innovative of cultures. It's not like a culture that's like, we love that you've done a only queer lineup. Do you know what I mean? That's not the UK's vibe. Whereas here it just is almost by default that there's going to be a comedian who is gay or queer, you know, in the lineup because it's Berlin, you know. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's definitely a more fertile soil here. I mean, what would you say to people who are maybe in a small scene, they're maybe thinking of moving to a larger scene? This also goes for Americans, of course, because like the majority of Americans don't live in New York, or they're not born in New York and LA, but they seem to gravitate towards these places. So was it overall a beneficial move for you to go to somewhere like London?
It was beneficial in saying to me that you're good enough at comedy that you could turn this into, like, it seemed, I mean, the world does both validation and kicks you down at the same time, but like, it seemed to say to me quite early on, you're good enough that this could be your thing, which was a really nice thing. Not that people weren't saying that in Berlin, but like, it was a smaller scene. Like, there wasn't, well, what was I going to do with it in Berlin at some point? Like, I couldn't be on the, you start your own show. That's what you do in Berlin. We all start our own show. That's how it goes. But you can't be on the TV. You can't get an agent. That's not going to happen.
And doing your first hour, as we were just talking about before, is like not really a badge of honor in Berlin. It just means that you have an hour to speak
just at
out
some
loud.
Point, people just do an hour. But I had to go back to square one. I had to go back to all these open mics, these bringers shows.
Oh God.
Where you have to bring a friend to make the audience, and your friend sometimes has to buy a minimum amount of drinks. It's like all of this stuff, which I was like, ah. But yeah, like it is, I don't know. I think what I have is like a best of both worlds in a bit, which is like I can go to London for a bit and do like a bunch of shows and try and do some like career leveraging things. And then I get to go to Berlin and do a bunch of shows here around people who I started with and who I know from the scene, and that's much more friendly and it's always nice. And basically what I realized is I'm essentially playing a game of scarcity capitalism on everyone I know, which is like, yeah, I have a lot of friends in Berlin and then they come out to see my shows because otherwise they can't see me when I come visit because I'm so busy doing shows. So yeah, I've basically scammed everyone I know and love and built a career out of it. So that's worked really great.
I mean, I think you bring a really good point that as fun as new scenes are to perform in and everything like that, and I wouldn't change it personally for anything. You don't have a marker to, am I actually good? Am I good in general? Like, it's just like, I might be good for this town, but am I good outside of here? And you kind of got the notice that, you are good. You won a freaking huge competition.
Yeah, I didn't
and you got
think
an agent
about it that much in
the
Berlin.
Comedy Store, yeah.
I think in Berlin, like, people were very nice, very complimentary. You included at the beginning were like, you know, you're doing well, you're smashing it. You've got, like, you seem to have this ability to do it. People were very nice, but I didn't really know. I knew nothing about stand-up. It was not a job I had aspired to do. I just happened to do it. People said nice things. I kept doing it.
I mean, you were a finalist in the first Berlin Stand-Up Awards, and you'd only done it a handful of times by that point. So that was pretty amazing.
That was like my 45th show, I think.
Right.
My 45th ever spot. And like the heat was like my 17th ever spot.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, so you really put in some work then between the heats and the finals.
Yeah. And so I was like trying to go like 3-4 times a week to try and build myself up to be able to be in the finals.
Yeah. So you said that you were with the Comedy Store. I don't know if that's something you want to talk about, but what's it like having an agent, and why did you leave them eventually?
I loved them both so much. They were both called... don't know how much I should talk about Simon and Simon. They're both two bald white men, both called Simon, who I still love dearly. I love hanging out with them. I love going down to the Comedy Store. They have been supportive to me in like very many multiple ways on personal levels in which I feel at the end they couldn't instinctively understand how to market me because they think they come from a very kind of old school comedy tradition, which is like funny is funny. And that's all well and good. But as a black woman in comedy, like you send me to gigs in like Surrey and Kent, who are these like Tory voters over the age of 60 in these kind of like backrooms of pubs. These people hate me. And there is no amount of, I could sell myself in certain ways that I'm not willing to do as a person to get them on side, but I don't want to do that. And I hate those people, to be honest. I hope they die.
Right.
So
big shout out to Surrey.
Yeah. So it was just a realization that I wasn't sure they were able to market me. And then everyone really was like, don't leave your agent till you've got a new agent. But I just had this sense that I could sense they were really, really nice about it. And when I said I wanted to quit, they were very... I called up Simon Christmas time and I said, I'm quitting comedy. And he was like, I really don't think you should quit. I think you have a talent that like not always people have. I don't think you should quit. And then they both said like, if we're anything to do with the reason why you should quit, then we should leave us. And I thought about it and I said, I just can sort of sense that they're there. I feel always like I'm disappointing them, even though I'm probably sure they didn't really care. But I was like, I think I should leave and go alone and just see if I want to do this more, rather than, because I'd had an agent from like the minute I'd been in London, like 2 months in, I'd got this agent. So I'd never known a time in London without them. But yeah, I wasn't sure that they did the things that I needed them to do for me.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it. I mean, if they're just putting you to all the regular gigs and, you know, I remember that kind of circuit in London where, it's this very like old man club kind of thing. And it's just like not. And then, you know, I mean, I suppose there's a part of you that could say, I wonder if someone with 20 years experience, who is me, I wonder if me with 20 years experience could get these people. And what could one do to get them in a way, but without pandering?
But I don't want to get them.
You don't want to get them, no.
No, because I don't want them to have a good time. I don't want old conservative voters to have a nice time. I want them to be miserable.
Yeah.
So I never want to get them.
So in a way you achieved that.
Yeah. So actually I was doing everything I set out to do in these back-end nowhere places, in the home counties. But like I don't... Yeah, this is a thing. Like, I think it's odd. Like I've had comedians who I've walked into gigs and go, oh, I know this isn't going to be a gig that likes me. I just know that they're not going to go with my vibe. And one comedian was like, oh my God, like I've always felt like that's my problem if they don't like me and I should do everything I can to get on them side. Otherwise I'm not doing my job right. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like I'm not interested in getting everyone inside. Like at all. I know the audiences that like me and they're like queer clubs. Or like incredibly like racially diverse places. And those are the people I'm really happy to give comedy to. They deserve comedy. Life's hard.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's not like, you know, when Hannah Gadsby was getting so popular, there was such a big backlash against that. And it's like, good. It's not for you. And
it's not for you. And that's okay because you literally have so much else.
Oh my God, all the rest.
And so you're fine. You don't need me as well. That's what I don't really understand. It's like, they don't need me, but that's okay because there is a market for me. And I'm just trying to find those people.
It's funny, actually, because it was like 20 years ago that I was doing comedy. And but there certainly wasn't anything like queer. There was like Funny Women was about the most diverse thing ever, and that was like a big lips and sponsored by like a makeup company. So even that was like the most 50s thing you can imagine. So here they come, the funny ladies. So yeah, I wonder if that's changed. I mean, there was definitely an art scene when I was there, and there was spearheaded by like Josie Long and people like that, like the more lefty kind of comics, and that was really great. But then you had to be like so artsy and lefty to be on that,
right?
So it was, and I kind of fell into that scene for a bit, but I wasn't really artsy enough for them, and I certainly didn't have the social skills to hang around with all these fantastic people who I just assumed all hated me. Big shout out to that crew.
No, but I feel like that. I don't feel like I'm particularly popular in the UK in terms of like mates. It's a very cool kids club.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very social game, and that's what made me kind of edge away from it a little bit. Is that it's just it's too much socializing, I think, and you know, like going on tour and something like that. It's very nice. We were talking about this the other day, and you were saying that you really like the tours, right? But for me, it's just like, if I'm traveling, I just want to relax and travel, and I don't want to have this like big thing.
I've got to work.
Right, I think we should get into the body of this. So we're going to get into the needs work section of this, which is essentially, it's very insulting to ask people on this podcast because it's like, please give me some material that is not working well. It's really sucking in front of audiences, and I'll try and fix it.
Yes,
but
please do.
The whole point of it.
I can't believe I get a comedy course, a Caroline Clifford comedy course for free.
Yeah, it's a solo one.
She like called me, and it was like a month after the band, and she was like, I've ruined my whole life. And I was like, well, yeah, what are you going to do? It's too late for the abortion. I've ruined my whole life. I can't go out. It's really stressful. And I was like, yeah, you'll be fine. And then I was at my mother's house, so I said to my mother, like, did you feel this way? Because my mother was a single mother. She was 42. She like had me alone. Had to go back to the small, like, tiny flat in like South London where I grew up, just to like raise me by myself. I was like, did you feel like that you'd ruined your life, that you were really scared? She was like, no, I loved it. But then of course I thought I'd birthed the Messiah. What? And like, yeah, and like the reason why I think she did this is because my father was and is still married to someone else. Yeah, and I just think sometimes people have cognitive dissonance about their behaviour. So they do something bad and they're like, it's fine because this one's the Messiah. Especially white women.
And I suppose the second thing that struck me about it is, it's such a funny idea, is that there seems to be like a lot of different emotional sources in here. So I think it's a matter of like deciding exactly what it is about, like what the unusual thing is, to use an improv term about it. So obviously your mum thinking that she birthed the Messiah is definitely an unusual thing,
right? I
would say, but it doesn't seem to be the focal point in a way, because we have this other focal point of she was your father. They weren't married.
Yeah.
So there's another thing there. So is this really about that? She's like. I really like that idea that it's about the cognitive dissonance of it, and just like, and then so if it's about cognitive dissonance, then make it all the way about that.
Oh, okay, because that's what I think it's about.
Yeah,
I think it's about the idea that like it's like, well, I'm sort of trying to link into like maybe Mary also didn't give birth to the Son of God, but maybe it was like Joseph. Like I guess it's that feeling of like, oh, I've slept with someone I maybe shouldn't have slept with. But it's fine because this one's the Messiah. Absolutely.
And I think it would help in a way, I think, with these parent things, because it's like, I don't know your mom at all, and I don't know what kind of a lady she is. You said she's a white woman, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we got it. It's in the bag. But yeah, it might just be interesting to sort of have an introduction to her so that I know in which way this is funny for her to say that.
Yeah.
Like, is it like so obviously delusional of her because she's this kind of person? Or is it really out of character because she's this kind of person? Or is it, or is it totally in character because she's like very witchy and always thinks these things?
Yeah, so it is totally in character if you've met her.
Yeah.
And she's like, she worked for like charities her whole life, like Christian Aid, Oxfam, these things. So she likes to think of herself as like a kind of, she's a do-gooding person. She's a do-gooder. She was a brownie, girl guide, ran the Girl Guides, goes to church. She's a do-gooder, but she's also very hippie, witchy in other ways.
Got you. Okay, so that's interesting. See, this is all sort of interesting information that bolsters the main point of it. And like, that's crazily, I mean, for a religious person to actually think that they birthed the Messiah is like, wow, I mean, that is, what a narcissist, you know? Like, what, that's like crazy to actually like think that. So I think that maybe the core emotion of it is just absolutely leapfrogged over. That's what it seems like to me.
Okay.
I don't really have a grip on how crazy this actually is. Because it's like, and she said that she birthed the Messiah, which was, and now we're on to the next thing. Now we're on to the thing about your dad. So I would say separate out or leave in the dad thing, because it's part of this. She's having like
an affair.
Yeah, the affair thing.
Yeah.
The affair also suddenly gets me in my head because I'm like, wow, that's crazy too.
Yeah.
And I don't really have anything tangible to grab onto in terms of the focal point of this material.
Okay. The thing is the affair, it's not weird to me because obviously I existed within that situation.
Yeah.
So I never found it weird because it was my norm. But I'm fully aware that most people who had parents that were together do find it weird.
Because like it just you know, I always say you know, if I'm thinking, I'm not laughing, so I'm like, oh right, so but then now I want to know about the affair all of a sudden. Like now I want you to put the brakes on because I want to know, like, did his family know about you and all of these other things?
Yeah, and some of those questions I can't answer. I mean, they know about me now for sure because I meet them all the time. I go and visit, but like, I wonder. That's why I wonder is I don't have a grip on it enough as a story myself, maybe, to explain it. But she just said this thing to me and I thought, well, wild thing to say. I have to put that in my stand-up.
Absolutely. It's a totally wild thing to say.
Yeah.
But I think it needs some background of your family situation so that like every time you say something, I'm like, that's a bomb. Of information. So that might be the thing, is that there's quite a lot to unpack in such a small space of time.
Okay, so I just need to unpack it more.
I think so. I think you need to like focus on this cognitive dissonance and maybe like make a few jokes about it. As you say, like Mary and Joseph would be the very obvious place to go to it, but I would say that would maybe be the end point of it, and there might be some interesting
before you get to Mary and Joseph.
Yeah, because that like seems like an obvious
I think
comparison.
She also was like just it was, I don't know, the 80s, and she was like, my father was black, obviously, and my mother is white, and she had this whole idea that she was like this idea of having like the mixed race babies. Like I think a lot of white people felt like this was like they were doing their bit towards like race relations, which is like would be fine if she hadn't like then dragged me at the age of 6 from like London to a very small white town and like made my life a living hell because of it. So I think there's that, but maybe that's too much to unpack.
Yeah, I think so. It's just like another really big thing. I mean, you have to...
How much am I unpacking?
It's like, for me, it's like, I just grew up in a small village. I think it's just like, just knowing the impact of every single thing you say is like I suppose it's like putting yourself in the shoes of like a kind of really boring person like me from a suburb. Yes, please put yourself only in my shoes. But still, it's just like your audience is just going to, on the whole, just be made up of regular people. That's what I always think when I'm writing, is kind of, what are they thinking when I say this? What are they thinking? And trying to write something that goes, oh, I know you're thinking that this is crazy, but wait till you hear this bit. So I guess it's just like thinking that this... birth the Messiah. That's the first, think of that being the first really big laugh of this set. So to make that a really big laugh of the set, you have to kind of like put in some groundwork before we get there, kind of thing, for us to go, oh my God, your mom is loopy. Yeah. We don't know her well enough for that to kind of come out.
So more mum stories.
Yeah, because I don't really know if it was just like something she said as an aside, or if it was...
At the time it felt like a weird aside, but we've had conversations about it since then.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you have to like paint maybe a bigger picture on the road to that one.
Okay, of my mother.
I believe so. I believe so. Like, can you do a good impression of her? Like, does she have a funny voice or anything?
No, she's just a really ordinary English lady in lots of ways from Sussex. But I have more stories about her. But it's always saying something a bit weird. But maybe that helps. I have like a story about that she's trying to run over all these private school kids lately because, well, she's got a speeding ticket and it was a 30 mile per hour speed limit. And the reason it's 30 mile per hour is because it's a private school there. And she was like, I don't feel like I should have to slow down for private school kids, which is also a weird thing to say. But she says these things every now and then. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, that's not. And then I was like, that's where I get my socialism from.
Do you like Maria Bamford?
I don't know her well enough.
Oh, okay. That's
also, you're like the third person that's recommended.
Yeah, just because she does a thing where she'll embody members of her family amongst other things, and she does like a really good job of it. Where you're like, oh, this, like, you feel like you know this woman, even though I don't know shit about like Americans, like families and stuff. But she's incredibly good at voices. But just if you want to see how somebody switches from talking about family members in a way where we kind of know them and hear them at the same time. Yeah, okay.
So everyone needs to know Judith more.
I think so, yeah. And like Margaret Cho is someone else that comes to mind who has like a strong mother figure within the thing. So even if your mum is like quite boring from Boring Town, there's still sort of a character that she is that's different to you that might be funny if you were to go into the voice a bit more.
All right, yeah.
It's like, well, of course, you were the Messiah. We all thought you were the Messiah. Like, it's just, it sort of gives it more impact if it's like, oh, this is someone's mother.
Saying that line.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So that was that's the overall note, is that there was just a lot happening in one small bit.
Right, and maybe it's just a bigger bit. But that's good. It needs to be a bigger bit. If I'm going to try and get this hour.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you're going to have a whole bit about family, right? I mean, it's like a common thing to have in your first hour.
I think so. But also because I haven't really these tendencies towards trying to like save everything on, like sort everything out, all the world's problems. And I think that's where it comes from, is that my mother. Yeah,
you were telling me the story about you, her schlepping you around like door to door charity things, which I think sounds really good. But of course, whenever you're doing family stuff, it's like in improv, like we tend to drift away if we're just talking about someone who's not in the room. So you always have to bring it back to like a metaphor or something that's going on with you right now.
Yeah. In Tanzania, everyone wears these bits of cloth that are called kangas. Like, that's what the women wear, like wrapped around them. My dad, to do his advertising when he was a politician in Tanzania, got kangas with his face on them. Yeah, so that women could wear them, and it would like act in places where there was like no TV, you couldn't have billboards. This was the advertisement. And my mother actually has one of these bits of cloth with my dad's face on that she likes to sleep in at night. That's too much information. But she bought it once to Glastonbury Festival, you know, Glastonbury Music Festival. Yeah, and so when my mother turned 60, she got her pension, she bought a ticket to Glastonbury, dyed her hair purple, was like, oh, off I go. And I was like, great. And I went with all my friends. I was 17. And she was like coming to meet all my friends one evening, and I knew my mother was coming to meet me, so I was like, stayed a bit sober. And all my friends were really high on MDMA, what you call Molly and we call Mandy. Two different names, same girl. And they were all really high, and my mother was like arrived, and she was like, hello, I'm Kate's mum. And then all my friend group, really high, were like, hello, Kate's mum. And then she took this bit of cloth off and held it up and was like, this is Kate's dad. And everyone was like, hello, Kate's dad. They're really excited. And the next day she was like, your friends are so friendly. And I was like, yes, when they're on drugs. They are. But yeah, she didn't know about drugs. But yeah, so he printed out these cloths and gave them out to people. And last time I saw him in Tanzania, he was like, but this is a kind of corruption. This is like giving people something so that they will vote for you. And I was like, that's not the kind of corruption that we're worried about with Africa. We're worried that a mining company is giving you hundreds of thousands of dollars and you're just taking it. And he was like, no. Okay, he's just a principled person. Okay, you can't connect because none of you have nice dads. That's on you. But yeah, he did come with something so that they will vote for you. And I was like, that's not the kind of corruption that we're worried about with Africa. We're worried that a mining company is giving you hundreds of thousands of dollars and you're just taking it. And he was like, no. Okay, he's just a principled person. Okay, you can't connect because none of you have nice dads. That's on you. But yeah, he did come with...
Great. Okay. Yes, I felt like there was a bit that I didn't hear that was kind of tagged onto the end of that as well.
There was, in the beginning I'd asked them if they said, did any of you have nice dads or something at the beginning. I think I was asking them because it was like, I'm going to talk about my dad, and everyone was just a bit quiet, and I was like, why is everyone so weird about it? But this was in New Orleans. This was a gig.
Yes, I thought that's why you were saying Andy and Molly kind of thing. Oh, so that for some reason I thought they were both in the same gig.
No, different gigs.
Great. Yeah, I think it's actually a similar note. So actually, for a start, you sound more relaxed in this one. So that's
I'm speaking slower.
Yeah, that New Orleans like vibe maybe. Because actually, I found that about London. It's a very stressful place.
Oh my god, yeah.
Like crazy. I even noticed when I was cycling. I used to have terrible road rage in London. I just don't have it here. It's just like everything's.
No, when I cycle my bike in London, I like flip off cars and stuff. I'm furious.
People in the face.
Yeah, like shout, get so mad at everyone. Yeah, it's very intense.
Sorry, I've got off piste here. So this is a really funny visual story, which is that this kanga. It reminds me. The first thing that sprung to mind was, you know, those socks you can get off Instagram with like dogs on them.
Yeah.
It was kind of like that. So I don't know if that's like a good modern comparison.
Yeah.
So and I can picture that really well somehow. That like just this. You know, big cloth with your dad's face on it, and then to add to it that you're all at Glastonbury Festival. I think it's a really, really fun image, and I enjoyed it. I like this thing about it's your friends are all high, and I can really imagine it somehow. I spent a lot of time at Glastonbury Festival.
Yeah.
So I suppose it's like, what do you think is the core funny thing about this?
The Glastonbury Festival story I think is actually fine, and I can get to work, and like when I've told it to people just like in conversation, they've like laughed. It's that I think the point I'm trying to make is like the corruption point, but I don't know what the point is I'm trying to make, which is like he is so principled, he thinks what he did was corruption. And I'm like, that's not really corruption, because
it's just branding.
It's just branding. You just did advertisement, and like in comparison to like politicians in Europe or the West, like this is not a problem.
Yeah, I would say from what I just heard here that the corruption thing doesn't go with this story.
Oh, okay.
And I think mixing it in was a little bit confusing for me.
Okay.
So I can't quite get my teeth into that part of it.
Yeah.
Also, I feel like maybe I missed a larger part of it that was maybe edited out from the beginning, because I don't really remember you specifically talking about corruption at the beginning.
No, I was just talking about these bits of cloth, I guess, with his face on it, but he'd seen someone was in his, this was in January, I was there in Tanzania, and I'd seen someone in his house wearing one. I said, oh, look, these are your bits of cloth with your face on it from when you were a politician 20 years ago or whatever. And he was like, yes, but this is a kind of corruption. Because he was like, I paid to get these made and then I gave them to people so that they would vote for me. And I was like, but that's like the same as advertising to someone. Like that's the same as having a billboard or putting a advert on TV. I don't think it's that different in a rural space where you can't do those adverts.
I mean, sorry.
Yeah. Where's the line?
But what is funny is the corruption that does exist in these places. And he's like, I printed my face like Instagram socks.
And I was like, that's not a problem. I was like, I don't think anyone's got an issue with that. The problem we'd have an issue with, or people would have an issue with, is if like a large mining company was paying you.
Yeah, or even more so. I mean, perhaps maybe you could even pull that even more, because the mining thing was kind of like a bit of a subtle point, but like, guns trafficking and whatever else you could pick out of it that would be like a and it, you could make a funny scene where it's like, but actually but this guy with his cloths, like he's the one that we're after.
That's essentially got himself like some merch.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, I think it's good to separate out these two ideas, because they're both fun ideas. I mean, I'm not saying that they should definitely go next to each other, but they maybe don't intertwine with each other.
But switch into this other story and then...
Yeah. But the Glastonbury one, I really, really like that. I think it's great. And I think, again, you could like paint the scene even more by having your friends being like, oh my God, there's got, the
real high vibes.
Yeah,
which is what happened at the time. It was insane.
Oh my God, I'd be so mortified if my mum met like my friends or anything like that, like high or...
But my mother never took any drugs, so she doesn't recognize it.
I suppose my mum didn't either.
So she was just like, they're so friendly.
Yeah.
She's a little bit in her own world, my mother.
I guess they all are, aren't they?
Yeah.
I was at my mum came to visit, and we went to a dinner party, and the boys were all smoking spliffs outside, and I was just like disappearing up my own asshole. I was like, oh my God. I can't remember how it came up with my mum, but she was like, oh, don't be silly. Me and Sally smoke it on the boat all the time. And I was like,
what? Who's this Sally that's corrupted you?
Yeah. I mean, not all the time, but I was so surprised that, like, you just paint this picture that they're the most conservative, stuck-up person ever, and actually, they're just human beings, would you believe, with their own lives and wishes.
So odd of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I speak a lot about like headings as a thing in when I do the course and everything like that. So there's a very specific heading to this, which is like my dad got his face printed on these things, and my mum wore it to the Glastonbury Festival, and met all my high friends. So it's like the corruption thing doesn't go under that heading.
It's somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's certainly next door to it. It kind of intros to it, I would say.
Yeah. But do you think it's before or after?
I think maybe it's before.
I think it's maybe before.
Yeah, I think maybe it's before. But it's one of those things where you can just, like, as you're trying out more material for your hour show, you can see what fits where and with whom. So this has been wonderful. Where can people catch you online? I'm obviously going to print it in the comments as well.
Yeah, Instagram. Kate Cheka, Cheka.
Great. Yeah. And then you're going to be back in London, are you?
Yes, I'm supposed to leave tomorrow, but there's a little bit of me that's very tempted to not go back.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, we'd love to have you stay.
Yeah, I'm having so much fun, but I also should go back because I'm exhausted.
Yeah. It must be nice to have all of these just much more queer-friendly gigs and everything here, as you were saying.
And just, I mean, like... Berlin's a funny one because there's so many there's a lot of references I can't make because I think they're too specific to the UK. And Berlin tends to like a lot of sex jokes and like relationship jokes.
Yeah, I mean, they do and they don't. I also hear the feedback that like people are really sick of the same topic all the time. Like, not everyone's just like fucking in a sex dungeon.
Don't imply we're all at the sex dungeon. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I can imagine. And I suppose there's like a very specific kind of dating apps joke. I don't use dating apps, so I tend to not really make dating apps jokes because I don't really understand dating apps. Yeah.
We were like, during the awards, we were kind of like, just for fun, we were doing like Berlin Comedian Bingo. And like the Foreigner's Office and dating apps,
Yeah.
Am I gay?
Am I gay? Who knows? Is
who
anyone?
Cares?
Yeah. Who cares? Is there maybe the more salient point? Yeah.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, people can see Kate Cheka in London performing around there. Yeah. So thanks very much, and come back soon.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.